Well, I couldn't see myself and I thought, wait a minute, I'm at this meeting. Why am I not showing up? I hid myself this morning. Hey, Suzanne.
That's good to do sometimes.
Yes, it is. Yeah, you can bring in the stool over here if you want to.
I know if you sit here.
Okay, if you can sit there if you'd like.
Hey, Jim.
Hi, Jim.
Hi, Jim.
There, I finally got unmuted. Good afternoon, everybody.
Hi, welcome.
Was that Sean? Who was that? Was that Sean?
Yes, I think so.
It is, not was.
The current Sean. Okay, thank you. You sound different. Hello, Susan. Oh, Susan Offling. Hello. Hello,
I
Susan.
have
Hey.
a different sound system I'm working with.
Ah,
That's why I had a hard time unmuting.
okay. Good to have you with us.
Yeah.
Hello, Ag. Hello, Mary Ellen Foster.
Hello, everyone. I'm glad to be with you and want you to know I have to leave early because of another commitment about 4:45. But thank you for the opportunity.
It is a busy afternoon.
Yep. And it sure is a beautiful one. And there's many meetings, yep, that we've heard of.
Hey.
Hello, Linda Thane. Hello, Linda Crosby.
Yes.
Gosh, the two Lindas, you guys showed up right exactly at the same time. I don't know what that means, but it's got to mean something. Oh, can't hear you, Linda.
Can't hear you, Linda, yet.
I said we're fashionably on time.
Oh, yes, you are.
What a beautiful group of people.
Oh, hi, Diane Gardner. Nice to see you.
Yes.
Yeah. We'll wait probably just a couple more minutes and see if might be a couple people joining us, and then we'll get started.
Okay.
Anita Gorder, is that you?
It's me. I turned off my video today because I'm laying down.
Oh, great that you can join us, though.
Hi, Anita.
Welcome.
Yeah. And hi, Chris. Chris Furlong, hi. Oh, hi, Ann Shields.
Suzanne, I haven't seen you for a while. It's good to see you.
Oh, there I am.
Dolores.
Here I am, fresh from the garden. I got my garden shirt on today. I planted Zuni corn today. No, I'm sorry, Hopi corn in the garden.
Oh, Doris. Hi,
Well, and welcome, Mark.
Dolores. Dolores, sit on my.
Welcome, Dolores, and welcome,
Oh.
Mara.
And Rosemary, I sent you a message, a chat message. It's good to see you. This is Linda Thane.
Thank you. Good to see you,
Yeah.
Linda.
I've seen you for a long
Yeah.
time.
We must be going to ships passing.
Exactly. Today we have met somewhere.
Yes.
Yeah.
Ships are meeting. Many ships are meeting today. So, you know, I think we, Marty, are you ready? Because I think maybe we'll just get, 1 minute or a thing. All right. I'm sure there'll probably be people joining us, but I wanted to kind of honor people's time here, and I know people have things to do. And I think Marty, just give me the signal, Marty, when you're ready. Up, I think that's still, wait. Ooh.
26. 26. Huh.
Okay, we are ready to begin. My apologies. There were some folks at the village who could not get on Zoom, so we are broadcasting it at the village. And as you have seen when you joined the meeting, we are also recording it for a number of community members who can't make it today as well. So with that, we are gonna
Start.
turn it over to Karen to start.
Okay. Well, welcome everyone today. Thanks for taking out an hour of your afternoon to be with us. Last week, Michelle Hugh, we met, and Michelle Hugh took us through the early history of the Sisters in Minnesota, the CSJs, and we talked about different actions we could take to support the work of our Indigenous neighbors in our efforts to become stronger allies. This afternoon is another step in telling our history, and it's going to take the form of storytelling, especially the stories of the sisters and their work with and relationships with our Indigenous neighbors and how those relationships have evolved over time. So part 2. And I invite you now to take a moment to reflect on the history of the land that you are on this afternoon. And I think most of you are in the metro area, and if so, we are on Dakota land. And just take a pause, and we pause to acknowledge those whose ancestral and forever homelands that we sit on today. We know that the land has been waiting for our respect, our acknowledgement, and our stories. And so we begin.
Good afternoon. We have a prayer from Chief Yellowhawk, Lakota, and I invite you to join me reading from home at the privacy of your own homes. O Great Spirit, whose voice I hear in the winds and whose breath gives life to all the world. Hear me.
I come
before you, one of your children. I am small and weak. I need your strength and wisdom. Let me walk in beauty and make my eyes ever behold the red and purple sunset. Make my hands respect the things you have made, my ears sharp to hear your voice. Make me wise so that I may know the things you have taught my people, the lesson you have hidden in every leaf and rock. I seek strength not to be superior to my brothers, but to be able to fight my greatest enemy, myself. Make me ever ready to come to you with clean hands and straight eyes, so that when life fades as a fading sunset, my spirit may come to you without shame. Amen.
We hope tonight, well, anyway, thank you, Connie. We hope tonight to share stories of the longstanding relationship members of our CSJ community have had with Indigenous people. And where have we seen members of the community in relationship with Indigenous neighbors? The answer to that is in many places.
So our format tonight is going to follow kind of the format of the Sisters Memorial Services, where we're going to invite people to share stories. We ask you to name the individual and share the story. And after every third story, we will have a little refrain song that we'll sing together just to soak in the different stories and take in the stories tonight. The group of Karen, Connie, and myself will kind of lead off with a couple of examples. We've asked a few people to start us, and then after we do 2 rounds of that, we will then open it up to the broader community that has joined us on Zoom here tonight. We'll begin, though, with a broader history of the community just to ground the larger conversation.
So many of the sisters worked in ministries where they served Indigenous people. And below here, you'll see the examples, some of the examples: the Bridge, Peace House, Hope Community, Incarnation House, the CSJ Community Garden Food Access Hub, the Free Store, and there may be others that you are all aware of that aren't listed here. And then the history of the Indigenous Awareness Working Group. This is, for many of you know, this is a working group of the Justice Commission, and it began informally as a group somewhere in the 1990s. And it formally became a working group in 2010. And right now we have about a mailing list of 20 to 25 people with about 10 active members who meet pretty much monthly, except during the summer. So ways that the CSJs have showed up to support the work of Indigenous people: a long-term relationship with Gitchitwa Kateri Catholic Church, preservation of Pilot Knob Sacred Site, the protection of Coldwater Springs and the 4 Oaks from the Highway 55 and airport projects. I think that happened, in the 80s. And then for a long time, the CSJ Partner in Justice grants have supported some native, in particular Dream of Wild Health, and we've supported other we've provided financial support to some other native issues and projects. And there will be other examples that you'll see. And Marty, I'm turning this over to you now.
And the community has hosted a variety of programs over the years, including one a few years ago with author Richard Wright at Carondelet Center. We've hosted a Supreme Court Justice Anne McKeague. And together with the CSJ Community Garden, they've hosted a variety of events and programs as well: film screenings, panel discussions with Carmelita Scharbeck, St. Kate's alumna. Carmelita also participated in the gardens and helped out in a whole variety of ways of helping to begin a healing garden on the CSJ campus. The Seed Keeper book conversation with Diane Wilson, which occurred earlier this year, and then staff participation, and also Carondelet Village members participated in a variety of sacred sites tours and learning in place with the Bedote tours. CSJ community has also been very active on advocating at the Capitol on a variety of legislative issues at the Capitol, particularly with Senator Mary Kunesh, and working on legislation around establishing the state task force for missing and murdered Indigenous relatives.
I think many of us on this call here have volunteered at Dream of Wild Health. And we know the sisters and the CSJ community have volunteered there. And could we go back to that other picture though, Marty? Have been involved for decades and have supported the farm's mission. Over a span of 21 years, the CSJ Partner in Justice grants have contributed a total of $101,500 to Dream of Wild Health. And that consistent support is part of the legacy of the sisters, especially at the beginning of those, back when it was just starting out. A gift of $5,000 25 years ago it went a lot further. That support, I think, did make a lot of difference to Dream of Wild Health. And Ann O'Neill had been involved with Dream of Wild Health for over 23 years. And you can see a picture on the right. Well, Ann had a way of drawing everybody on board with her agenda or passion. So she got many sisters have been and consociates have volunteered there over time. And on the right, you can see the picture. We attended, a group of us to represent the CSJ group, attended the 25th anniversary this past fall. And we had leadership members from CSJs there too.
Can I add that some years ago, a group of us and members of the Familia de San Jose from Chile who were visiting us participated in an afternoon or morning and lunch at Dream of Wild Health, and we had a wonderful experience sharing with the community there. It was very memorable for the Familia members who could be there.
Thank you. I do think we have deep roots there.
Yes.
And our relationship with Dream of Wild Health. These comments are from Jennifer Teschney, who couldn't be here today, but she shared that Marty, that there's a close relationship between Dream of Wild Health and the CSJ Community Garden. That connection between the two was woven by Ann O'Neill, and Ann planted a gift of sweetgrass from Dream of Wild Health in the CSJ. And raspberry plants were donated from the garden, reciprocity wise, to Dream of Wild Health. And the farmer, the garden group has attended work days at the farm. Dream of Wild Health shared heirloom Potawatomi bean seeds and Blue Dent popcorn with the CSJ garden. So those are rich connections.
Yes.
The CSJ community has also showed up in solidarity and worked with St. Kate's on a variety of events around the missing and murdered Indigenous relatives. We've attended the opening of the reopening of the American Indian Center. We've partnered with Gichitwa-Kateri in a variety of ways, including this special trip that we did together with the community down to the Shakopee Community Museum. We've been involved or were involved in the Tekakwitha conference that was here in the Twin Cities area last summer, and 16 members of the CSJ community attended, including participating in the evening talent show. And now we're going to move into sharing stories of individuals. Again, after every 3 stories, we will try and take a moment of pause and sing a refrain together. So we'll have, Connie is going to start us off with the first reflection.
Sister Ann O'Neill. She's here on the left with Elder Ernie Whiteman from Dream of Wild Health. And on the right, she's with Heather Drake, who was the farm manager at Dream of Wild Health. And you can tell by that smile that Sister Ann is in her element here. her relationship, her respect for Indigenous people began when she was a young child in Western North Dakota, and she met Indigenous people that worked with her on her dad's farm ranch. We were asked to share some stories about the relationships, and there are so many stories that we could share another time. I wanted to share today some words from Joe Lagarde from the White Earth Nation. Joe said of Anne O'Neill, he said, "She is a leader without footprints." And by that, he meant she did so much, and there was no fanfare, and she never called attention to herself. She just worked steadfast under the radar. She was there with Joe, collaborating and creating scholarships for Native children up north, finding funds, finding pro bono legal work for the NIBI Center, advocating with the NIBI and Menomin Symposium with the university and the NIBI Center. And one year she found a private donor because Dream Wild Health needed a tractor. So Anne made a tractor appear. So that is just a taste of, she did so much without calling attention to herself. And I think that'll be a common theme this afternoon with many sisters. But the lessons that Anne taught me from her relationships with Native people included, and I really value this, the concept that there is so much more to the world than we can see. And she always said, tears are healing. And she said, ceremony. She said it took her a while, like a couple years before her death. She said, it took me this long to realize how central ceremony is to everything in the spirituality of their daily lives. And she was talking about someone who was Native, who was a free spirit. And she said, and the spirit goes where it will. That stuck with me. Thank you.
And kind of continuing in the similar vein, I will share just a very simple story about Sister Jane Hurley, who unfortunately is with family this week and is unable to be with us today. But Sister Jane has come up a number of times to volunteer at the Dream of Wild Health Farm, attending also their Gardener Warrior celebrations. And on one particular Gardener Warrior celebration, the youth took Jane by her hands and did a round dance with her around the circle. And so even in her 90s, Sister Jane and the youth were connecting and dancing together. So a beautiful memory I always have of going to the volunteer days and events at Dream of Wild Health with Sister Jane.
Oh, Sister Jan Dawson, dear Sister Jan is in the pink sweater on the far right. And she actually had been active in Native issues far back in the early 90s. So she and Joseph and Mary Beth Boyle and Dot Walking and other folks from Bread and Roses, there were groups of people that preceded the Native American Awareness Group in their passion for working with these issues. But Sister Jan taught me the importance of, and taught our group, the importance of taking actions when requested or when invited by Indigenous people, such as when we were asked to, all religious people were asked to step up and support the Standing Rock issues. We only took action as a community, not when we thought it was a great idea, but when Jan said, now is the time, and we were all asked. Jan had said several times, we have much listening to do. We don't know what the real problems are for Native people. And many times she said there's much work to be done. Jan was involved closely with the Mendota Dakota in issues such as protecting the Coldwater Camp at Coldwater Spring, and protecting Pilot Knob in 2003 on protecting Pilot Knob from being overdeveloped. And so she's worked so hard to help protect sacred spaces. I wanted to share a story from Bob Brown was the chair of the Mendota Dakota tribe at the time of his death in 2003. And his widow, Linda, I'm going to share quickly her story about Sister Jan. She said, one of my best memories of Jan is after Bob passed at St. Joseph's Hospital. They brought him back from the ICU, and Sister Jan got the hospital to turn off the sprinkler system so we could do a pipe ceremony there, after the ICU. How great was that? And she also said, well, every card that Jan gave her was blank with a sticky note so that you could use the card again. But she said Jan was an amazing and inspirational and strong woman, and we all loved her. So.
Me too.
So I'm going to invite you to sing along with a very simple refrain as we now have completed the sharing of 3 stories. So. And we'll share 3 stories.
Do you have Sister Vera's picture, Marty?
I am bringing.
Jean.
Okay, I think we're going to have
okay.
Ian Shields, are you with us?
I am with you.
Perfect.
Oh, Mary. This is from a day that Connie and Mary and I went to the gallery by I'm not ready to kind of remember that. What's the name of this gallery?
All Nations, is it
Huh?
All Nations?
All my
Oh.
relations.
All My Relations Gallery. Thank you. And so we enjoyed that so much together. And Mary was just a trooper. It was a hot summer day, and she pushed her walker along. And Mary had a long relationship with the Native American community through her justice work with Bread and Roses, anti-war type work. And so when they were building Highway 55, Mary was involved with the people. And I met Mary in the garden. She ended up being my my CSJ companion when I made my commitment 10 years ago. And she just was a great friend that had that in common with me. And she had a picture in her apartment of that encampment area with the teepee up, and she enjoyed being part of the community. So I don't know if you have any other comments, Connie, about Mary.
No, thank you.
Then the next, we're going to put a group of sisters, the McDonald sisters. As many of you know, they have been very involved in a variety of peace protests and other activism over the years. And so we're going to share a very short video of Sister Jane talking at one of the protests outside of Honeywell. So give me just a second to bring that one up. My apologies here. Let me try that again.
Sister Jane helps people feel good about themselves. When we focus our camera on her, she always pulls someone else into the picture.
Damia.
Which we thank you, Bear, for that information. I say to the younger generation, we need to listen very carefully and prayerfully to the Indigenous people, the First Nations, the sacred people, and I often like to teach with the young people too, to remember our history, that we did genocide many of the Indigenous sacred people and built on the backs of the African slaves. So we have a lot of restitution to make and a lot of reconciliation and asking of forgiveness. And you see, we can stand side by side and hand in hand and heart in heart to make a difference and stop the genocide now of sacred Mother Earth that they have known all along our sacred places. So we thank you today very much. As you say, Miigwech?
Yeah, I said Miigwech Padamia.
At Alliant Tech rallies, Jane uses this artificial leg to show that landmines blow up people's legs.
All right, then I'll invite Connie to share about Sister Vera. I'll put the slides back up on the screen.
Sister Vera Chester was a theology professor at St. Kate's, and Vera started, I feel like I'm on a first name basis only because I heard from Ann O'Neill so much about Vera, but I never had the pleasure of meeting her. Vera started the Native American Awareness Task Group, and then she led that group until her death in May of 2012. And then Ann O'Neill stepped forward to help lead that group, or convene that group, actually. And there's a Vera Chester Memorial Fund, which is a scholarship for Native students at it's a scholarship fund that was at St. Kate's. We found that Sister Vera spoke at St. Kate's 75th anniversary. So this was in the 1980 to 81 school year. And Sister Vera spoke on a talk called Kateri Tekakwitha, the Spirituality of a Native Catherine. And the conclusion of that paper was involved the spirituality of Kateri might have to say to us. And she spoke to the students at St. Kate's and to the CSJs at that celebration. So Vera's interest and ties to Native people and interest in their issues went back far, far longer than 40 years, 43 years.
Okay, so I invite you to sing our refrain again. Give me just a second to bring it back to the screen.
Marty,
Yep.
I have to leave, and I would really like to share before I have another meeting that I'm missing.
Yes, go ahead, Mary Ellen.
Sister Marian Lawaji was very involved with spirituality, especially in her healthcare thing. When she was in Arizona, she was in partnership with a Native American healer and became very good friends with him. And she really did a lot of work there. But when she came back home, she invited him to come, and we had a very well attended large conference on Native American healing. And it was here, and then there was a second one that was held in Green Bay. And it was a very powerful experience with Native people from the area, as well as those many of us who had joined it. And I think that people are not aware of how much she really was very much in tune with the healing understanding of pastoral care from a Native perspective. So it was powerful, and I just want to be sure that this is included. And the other person that I knew quite well was Rose Tillmans, and Rose was a friend. She was just a deep friend with many Native people. And when she opened it, she was with the free store. She discovered that Native people came every day, and then they'd pretend they needed something, and then they'd give it away, but they really wanted just to visit. And that's why she ended up opening Peace House. So her connection with Native people was on a very simple one-to-one experience, but it was very deep, and she had very close friends.
Well, thank you, Mary Ellen, for sharing. And you have now started off an open sharing. We invite others to share other stories that you might know of. So thank you, Mary Ellen. Feel free to unmute yourself and share a story if you know of another community member. Or other stories of community members we might have already talked about.
I'll share because I will also have to leave not too long. I was privileged to be able to do my intern teaching during my master's program at Madison with the Menominee Indians in Neopet, Wisconsin. And one of my biggest or most meaningful memories of that time, this was the late 60s, was noticing how many of the students were drawn to do artwork. And so we organized an art fair for the community. And this was the first time that this has been done. It was quite exciting. And more recently, I'm living in Stillwater area right now. I have been connected to one of the Lutheran churches here that has, it's had a grant from the Lutheran Church to do public education regarding Native American issues. And, you know, one of the things that I've attended some of their events, which have included bringing in speakers and exhibits, and then also a book group that's been reading multiple books, you know, for the last 2 years, I guess.
Thank you, Marianne. That was very good of you to share. Thank you.
One experience I'd like to share before I have to leave is that for those of us who have served on the board recently at St. Catherine's, have had the privilege of serving on the board with two Native alums, Colleen Slaughter and Ann McKeague. And it's been a privilege to have their input and experience shared in board meetings and to be able to get to know them just a little bit for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. We'll do our refrain again and then invite others to share some more stories. Like to share.
I don't know if anyone has mentioned Connie Gleason. She did her work with the Indians in the St. Louis province. So she didn't have much talking with that I know about. I taught with her at Learning in Style, which was like moving from one kind of different group, from the Native group to those who come in as aliens. So I think she transferred her love from one to the other, but I don't know the stories that she might have been able to share before she died. knowing coming, perhaps she would have been coming to this very meeting to tell you how much she loved what she had done. And it was a great thing to be with her. But we never talked about that part of her work.
She was very quiet about that part of her work, Mary. That is correct. I will try and bring up a photo from her obituary and a little quote. Give me just a second here. Oops, for some reason, it doesn't want to open up. Okay, well, maybe someone else has a story. My apologies about that, Mary. I can't get her photo to open up.
I could share a couple of stories. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Hello?
welcome, Margaret.
Okay, well, I worked for 10 years at the Indian Health Board Clinic in Minneapolis. And when I first started working there, there was quite a bit of, only way to put it was a not very good acceptance of who I was. And what did I just do here? But what was interesting because I didn't know what was going on. And at that point, over time, I realized that the people that were uh, had been abused by religious and or priests. And so I was looked upon like, well, who was I? And over time, people found out who I was and was accepted. And but it was hard to hear those stories. Something else happened that was struck me of the prejudice toward Native peoples when my drivers did not show up to take clients to the hospital, so I did. And these were two different incidences with elder women, and had to come to the table of the clerk and answer some questions. And the clerk at the table said to me, "Can she write her name?" And I said, "Why don't you ask her?" And another time, they asked another elder, "Can she read?" And I said, "Why don't you ask her?" And then they did, and they weren't quite sure what to do about it. And what ended up happening was I talked to one of the elders on the way home. I said, "It is not right. What happened to you in there?" And she said, "Oh, Margaret," she says, "it happens all the time." So that was a brief couple of incidences, but something that was very great that I had the ability or the chance to take part in was a sweat lodge and a healing ceremony at the clinic. And then to participate in eating the food, walleye, venison, berries. And it was like getting in touch with the people's food. And it told me something about the people as well. And then just a little footnote to this, there is a show that was on Channel 2 recently called Little Bird. And Little Bird refers to Indian children that were taken away from their families in Canada with no justifiable reason and adopted into other families. And then the other is Tony Hillerman's daughter, Ann Hillerman, has a new book out now in which she talks about lost birds, those who are trying to figure out what their heritage is. Excuse me. And the problem is still there. That's all.
Thank you, Margaret, for sharing.
that went so fast. Could you do it again? My reading ability was very slow on that, and I'd like to cherish it a little bit more. Could you show it
Okay.
again, please?
Okay.
I love that. I want to cherish it a little more. This is Sean Phillips. Um, Another person that hasn't been mentioned is Shar Madigan. And Shar did amazing work on Portland at Hope Community. The first volunteer job I had at Kateri was I would show up on Saturday mornings at the Catholic Worker House and pick up all the kids and go to a ball game or movies or just get the kids out of the house to give the women a break. And so that's how I first got to meet the CSJs in the Native community.
Thank you for sharing that, Sean, and including Shar Madigan as well. Thank you. Why don't we take a moment and we'll sing our refrain again, and then we'll invite a few more stories. Go ahead, Rosemary.
Okay. Well, I was thinking of just coming to listen to the stories from the CSJs, and it wasn't until Maren was talking about her experience that I thought that I'd like to mention my experience. In 1975, my first teaching job was at Red Cloud Indian School on the Holy Rosary Mission in on the Pine Ridge Reservation in South Dakota. And just as Maren was talking, I was just thinking back to all of those kids, all of those, that it was just like all these pictures of these wonderful, wonderful children. And one of the things that I appreciated very much at the time and continue to appreciate was the economy of words that that the Native people in Pine Ridge have, the economy of words that they could and this was the students also were able to tease with just a lift of an eyebrow or just one word or something that sensitivity to the nonverbal. And one place that I would notice this, I could, this is like unleashing. I was there 4 years, and it was a lot. But one of the places that you could really notice this was in the high school basketball games that and there were very good teams on the that we had at Red Cloud. And when they would go and play one of the border towns, then the students, were just like, they were just very like fish, and the border kids were these like, really like these cowboys, and they were And they would just constantly get fouled, and you could just see the difference in the bodies there. There was a very generous, I don't want to take a lot of time, but there was a very generous man that one of the priests and some of the sisters and some of the teachers, he would take us, his name was Pete Swiftbird. And he said, I'm not a medicine man, but he was a very generous heart, and he and dedicated, and he would have sweats and invite us to the sweats. And it's the first time that I had ever heard of talking with rocks, that sacred rocks. That was the first time I'd heard of that. And the first time I had ever heard of joking with spirit, of joking with God. And I was like, oh yes, this is it. So there was I think that some of the best times in my life was during that. And afterwards, some of the most heartbreaking times. I was not prepared for the students that I was very close to for 4 years, because it was a middle school where some of them I would teach them 4 years, and we would go, and we were young and single, and we would go and take them lots of places. I was not prepared for the messages we would get back of the children that had been killed by that had been murdered on the reservation, or car accidents and things. So, but what I remember are the grandmothers. Everybody seemed that they had somebody that was just really in their corner. It was a good time. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing, Rosemary.
Forgive me, Rosemary. Are you an associate? I'm not familiar with you. I'm Sean, by the way.
Yes. Mhm. I am. Yeah. We'll have to talk sometime.
Anyone else have other stories? I mean, we could nudge Sean. Surely he's got a good story or two of Sister Anne.
Well, Sister Anne has come up just recently, so I think we'll share that story. Sister Anne loved to introduce you to people, and you didn't never ever have a rationale of what she was doing. You usually found out sometime down the road a while, and you went, "Oh, that's why she introduced me to this person." She was constantly arranging relationships so that people could get things done that she thought they needed to get done. So most recently, we've been talking about Catholic rural life. And as I began exploring this subject, I began to remember that Sister Anne used to, every chance she would get, she would introduce me to the director of Catholic rural life. And she never did tell me why. She just went, "Oh, you need to meet this man," or "You need to meet this person," or whatnot. And definitely some of her rationale has become more clear recently of what needs to be done at Catholic Rural Life, and there's lots of work that she has left undone there. I'll just say that. One of the things that I had the privilege of doing was preparing for her passage into the next world. And one of the things I got to do was look at her prayer space. And I took a picture of it and took it home. And I took all the pieces and then people at the funeral were given pieces off of the prayer table that were there. So there was one thing on that prayer table that I was like, oh, maybe this is something that I might keep. And it was a little tin box with a pen. It was like a pen case. And I opened the pen case up, and there's a chunk of iron in there that I did not know what it was. So I went and looked up the maker mark on the piece of iron, and it was a black diamond piton used for mountain climbing that she had on her prayer desk. And I have that piton still today. And I'm reminded constantly that she always is my belay partner and is with me.
Thank you for sharing that, Sean. Well, maybe I'll share one more story and then we'll go back to our refrain and then invite others to share. But Sister Sharon Howell, we might not be thinking about as well over the last 3 years in particular. She has been very gracious in hosting Joseph Bester and folks from Gitchatuacateri Church to come here to campus to harvest sacred medicines for the rituals at the parish. And so I think we should also honor Sister Sharon as well. And with that, we'll go back to our refrain and then invite others.
Sister Sharon also, when she was the director of the Office of Black Catholics for the Archdiocese, did a great deal in working with people of color and communities of color. So not only African American, but Hispanic and Asian and Native American. And at that time, she had gathered a group together so that all of the parishes of color in the archdiocese met periodically, which they don't do that anymore. And I think that was a really big thing for Sharon to develop.
For sharing that also, Sean. Thank you. Other stories, I mean, I could maybe nudge Bridget Kelly. She and the St. Joseph Workers have been on many sacred sites tours with Jim Bear Jacobs.
Yeah, thanks. It's so great to hear these beautiful stories. I was thinking about over the length of the program, how many sisters have and how many communities have invited us. When we lived as a part of Hope Community, I think we had natural one-on-one relationships with a lot of folks in Ventura Village and folks that lived in Phillips as neighbors, many of whom were Native American folks. So I was thinking about that. And I was thinking about Ann O'Neill, and Ann O'Neill was one of the founders of the St. Joseph Worker Program. And she also connected us with Diane Wilson. And for 1 year, we had a St. Joseph Worker placed with Dream of Wild Health and partnered in that way. Yes, and Char Madigan, I'm just echoing a lot of I'm just taking in a lot of the stories and feeling that. And ourselves have partnered with Minnesota Healing Stories and with Jim Bear Jacob for many years, especially bringing new people into the Twin Cities, orienting them to this space through the story of this land and the people that have origin stories here. So we're grateful to Jim Bear in that way. And then to Sean Phillips. Sean was also a great partner to the St. Joseph Worker Program for our orientation, especially when we were a part of the Phillips community and lived in Phillips. So thank you to Sean and to Gitchit Wakateri as well.
Thank you, Bridget, for sharing.
I also want to say Ann O'Neill loved to copy off long articles and put them in my mailbox. She was a voracious scholar as well and liked to nudge people into good work.
Well, and I also wanted to mention that this is about Sean, because I first met Sean through the work on that we did together on the land acknowledgement. Sean had been a member of the Indigenous Awareness Working Group for I don't know how long, but of course he knew Sister Ann, and then when the work of the land acknowledgement, that opportunity came up, he was along with Sandra Mitchell from St. Kate's and several of us from the CSJ community. We worked together on that land acknowledgement. And I have to say, one of the things I always appreciated about Sean, I mean, Sean was kind of kept us on track, I think, in many respects, and kind of said, you know, because when I first started doing that, really, the work on that was really influential for me, just in terms of my own education and learning so much about Native Americans, and he was instrumental in, I just think, in some of the aspects of the group and telling us to check out this resource or that resource, listen to this, or no, I don't know if you want to say it that way, or just really kind of trying to be a reflection, a mirror for us sometimes in terms of our white perspective. So just thank you for that, Sean.
Thank you, Karen, for sharing that. And maybe I see Kate has her hand up.
Thank you, Marty. And thank you, everybody, for gathering everyone together. I just wanted to say how grateful I am that a couple of years ago it was when we started getting ready for with the conference that took place here in the Twin Cities in Bloomington a year ago, and how amazed I was that I was allowed to come to the planning meetings and to take notes. And I'm thinking, who am I? You know, I'm really a nobody. You don't know who I am. And besides, I'm white. Is that okay with you? And it was like, of course, you're somebody who can help. And the way I was invited in so graciously, I think, like Margaret was talking about too, you know, people just got to know me and were very very willing and very gracious in sharing a lot of wisdom. I learned a lot during that 2-year planning period, and was just happy to be a part of it. It was a powerful experience, the entire thing. And again, the graciousness was awesome.
Thanks, Kate, for sharing that. Let's do our refrain again, and then we'll invite 3 more stories, and maybe that will be our final 3 stories for this evening. But let's do our refrain again.
Awesome indeed, the entrusted.
I'd like to just continue what I was saying. I'm sorry, something occurred to me when we were talking about tending the holy. It was not only that I was, that I was white. I came to understand that I'm Irish, and that was a huge, huge part of my own learning. I mean, I knew I was Irish, but like really understanding what that means. And part of how that came about was not only in the Tekawitha conference, but in the pilgrimage that happened that went from the Basilica to Cristo Rey, and the chanting and the praying that happened there. I could feel my ancestors coming to me. And I realized I will never know who they are, but they know who I am. And they showed up there and let me know that this work is important, not only for myself and for the world around me, but for them too. And that they're following me in all of this. And I would not have come to that same level of recognition, but for the Indigenous people who were, again, gracious enough to pray with me, to work with me, and to allow me to be with them. So I'm finally done. Thanks.
Thanks again, Kate. Do we have another story or two?
Marty, I have a question, and it would be for anyone who is on the Justice Commission. When we speak of the land acknowledgement, are there other communities or groups or organizations or societies that are doing a similar thing, or how did we get that particular land acknowledgement? Do you have any answer for that?
Well, there's a whole committee here of folks that were involved with that. I will invite any of them to share the process and how we came to that. But the quick answer, Mary, is yes, there are a lot of communities that have begun to use the land acknowledgement.
And I will also add, a lot of the places where we looked at were at some of the universities. It seems to be a thing for universities to do right now, is to do land acknowledgements. I'm not sure how many Catholic churches do them. I know that Spirit, they're in a 3-church community right now called New Branches, and they created a land acknowledgement. And then Spirit of St. Stephen's, because they're Catholic, we consider ourselves Catholic, although not acknowledged as Catholic by the Archdiocese, that they felt like because of the role of the Catholic Church historically in the colonization of this country, that they wanted to create their own land acknowledgement that was probably more pertinent to the Catholic history. So, but Marty, I think, do you remember how our little group came to be, how the relationship with St. Kate's, how that came about? I don't remember that.
I think the quick story is, from what I recall, Becky Roloff had gone to New Zealand, and it's a practice in New Zealand. The New Zealand government does an acknowledgement in their schools, at any public event related to the government. They do a land acknowledgement with the Maori people in New Zealand. And she came back and nudged a number of us to see if there could be a way we could do something similar here. And then it started a several-year journey. We engaged Sean and other folks, probably 2.5 years of researching, seeing what different universities in particular here in the US, the native governance groups, and a variety of other folks to help us to reflect upon the land acknowledgement of the land we're on.
I think
Is
it's
there
very
anything on the
common.
federal level?
I think it's
Go
very
ahead.
common for religious orders to be doing land acknowledgements across the board, because they're also looking at, well, we got this land in the beginning and now many of our orders are closing out. What do we do with this land that we've been given? And so those conversations in the religious orders are happening.
And I think the Benedictines up in at St. Ben's, because of their history of running boarding schools, that they were kind of out in front in terms of trying to acknowledge their history and to reach out to Native people to start conversation. So they've had I think a journey full of integrity, it seems like, as they realized kind of what their history was.
I think a
Is there
lot of
anything is there anything on the federal level? What we've been mentioning has been a lot about Minnesota, perhaps across the country, but is there anything federally acknowledging, since we made all the treaties that we broke? No.
I don't believe at this time there is, Mary, but there is a movement towards a bill to set up a commission, a federal commission with the US government looking at the boarding school history. So I would imagine if that bill does eventually pass, that commission then would need to look at the broader history as well.
Thank you. Sean, you were wanting to say something when the two of us got.
Yeah, and some of it, what Marty just talked about, the response of religious organizations developing land acknowledgements was because the USCCB has asked all churches and organizations to give any records and over to Native tribes and communities. So they've asked us to do a research of our archives and really look at our relationships and then share that information so that children can be found. I think there's 23,000 listed right now that are missing.
Wow.
Well, I know we're coming up on our time here. We said we were going to go for about an hour and 15 minutes. Why don't we do the refrain again and then maybe talk about next steps or next steps after this sharing. Karen, do you want to start us in the conversation of next steps?
Sure. Well, first of all, I'd just like to say thank you all for coming. And we know that there are people with stories who were not able to come today, and maybe some of this has tweaked your memories of stories that you might want to share. And so we were thinking about next steps and wondering if we should have another session like this, if there might be interest in that. And also, I know that there were some of the people in the village who couldn't join us by Zoom today, but they are joining us over their own that internal TV station. So if people have stories that they want to share, they could contact either Marty or myself or Connie. But in the meantime, we know that there are some stories sitting out there, like people like Sharon Howell who couldn't come today. So I don't know, we're open to any suggestions people might have or any interest. The floor is open for any comments or,
I think another thing that wasn't mentioned was Sister Ann O'Neill and the publishing of the Three Sisters recipe book out of Dream of Wild Health. And she was very big part of that, putting that together.
Wow, didn't know that. Thanks, Sean. Well, any thoughts about next steps, or people enjoy hearing the stories today? And as we were planning this, I just want to say one thing. As we were planning this, Marty and Connie and I were kind of out there, kind of in the weeds, talking to sisters about, who they might have known or what their own experiences are. So there may be people, I'm hoping there are people out there still thinking about some stories. And I think sometimes, there was one sister in particular I spoke to who said, well, I didn't really do much, but she did. When she started telling me what she did, I went, well, that's a lot. So it's kind of like, kind of owning our own history in terms of, even though we might not have thought it was much, it was significant. And even if it's not, developing relationships alone is significant.
And a comment in the chat that Annabelle would like to do this again in the auditorium live. So just passing that along from the chat as well. So.
Connie, did you have a comment?
Oh, look, we're getting feedback in the chats there.
Ah.
Thank you for people's thoughts.
Well, maybe with that, again, feel free to reach out to Karen, Connie, or myself to share feedback from today, share other stories that we might be missing, or sharing if we should do this again. But really, as Karen has already shared, thank you all for coming today and being a part of this, remembering and resharing stories. And maybe we could just close with our refrain once more, and then we can leave it open for folks to chat if they would like.
Just one remembered I wanted to say is, we recorded this because we wanted to capture some of these stories, because it's these kinds of stories and remembrances that are not archived anywhere. And we thought that, it was important to be able to share some of these stories while we still have people alive and who can remember some of this stuff. So, yep. That's it. Let's sing it out.
One last time with our refrain, sing it out, and then we'll let people unmute and just chat, and we'll turn off the recording at that point.
Indigenous people.